We will begin here. President Biden answered a big question last night in his State of the Union address. Does he want to unite America as he promised he would as a candidate last go-around? The answer was a resounding no. Some are calling the speech a campaign rally, a political theater. It was attack after attack on the Republican Party and pure hate for Donald Trump. At least he finally tried to say Laken Riley's name after some heckling to get him to say it. I'm Harris Faulkner. You are in the Faulkner Focus. The speech was 1 hour, 7 minutes. Biden laid into former President Trump from start to finish 13 times. Never said his name, though.
A president, my predecessor, failed the most basic presidential duty that he owes to American people, the duty to care. I think that's unforgivable. My predecessor, a former Republican president, tells Putin, quote, "Do whatever the hell you want." That's a quote. My team began serious negotiation with a bipartisan group of senators. The result was a bipartisan bill with the toughest set of border security reforms we've ever seen. Oh, you don't think so? Oh, you don't like that bill, huh? And if my predecessor is watching, instead of paying politics and pressuring members of Congress to block the bill, join me in telling the Congress to pass it. My lifetime has taught me to embrace freedom and democracy. Now other people my age see it differently. The American story of resentment, revenge, and retribution, that's not me.
Criticism is continuing to pour in. His predecessor, as he called former President Trump, said that may be the angriest, least compassionate, and worst State of the Union speech ever made. It was an embarrassment to our country. And here's Alabama Senator Katie Britt in the official Republican rebuttal.
What we saw was the performance of a permanent politician. President Biden's border policies are a disgrace. This crisis is despicable. People are scraping by, while President Biden proudly proclaims that Bidenomics is working. Goodness, y'all, bless his heart, we know better.
I actually checked on YouTube a little while ago. This has picked up so much traffic. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and his own State of the Union speech.
A growing number of Americans are rejecting divisiveness. They're ready to unite, to rebuild this country, and to fulfill the promise of the America of my youth. They're ready to vote for something and for someone they like, for someone who represents hope and healing.
Well, that was from his campaign ad. We'll have a little bit of his speech coming up. Republican Senator Ron Johnson was where it happened last night. He's on deck. First to Lucas Tomlinson at the White House. Lucas.
Harris, the speech lasted just over an hour, and there were several interruptions, including from Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, who demanded the president say the name of that young woman killed in her home state by an illegal immigrant.
It's not about him. It's not about me. I'd be a winner. Not really. Lincoln Riley, an innocent young woman who was killed by an illegal.
President Biden might have been thinking about football. Of course, Lincoln Riley's the head coach of the USC Trojans. Now some pushback from a progressive member of the squad, Ilhan Omar, posting on X, "Let me be clear, no human being is illegal." That word didn't seem to bother former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who gave Biden a sitting ovation.
We usually say undocumented. He said illegal. I don't think it's a big deal.
Okay.
I don't think it's a big deal.
But more broadly,
because I think his focus was on the sympathy for the families. I think what he did was spectacular. He did it with vigor. He did it with vision, with patriotism, and I think it was one of the finest State of the Union addresses I have seen, and I've seen many.
The Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson did not see it that way.
It was a hyper-partisan attack speech. It was a campaign speech, it really was, and a pretty vitriolic one at that, calling out, President Trump almost by name. His predecessor, he said, 13 times? It was just so over the top and so inappropriate, and it's not what the country needs.
President Biden heads to Philadelphia this afternoon to begin his post-State of the Union campaign, which many people believe began last night, Harris.
All right, thank you very much. Republican Senator Ron Johnson of the great state of Wisconsin is with me now. You were there last night. Just first of all, your top line thoughts about what you saw from President Biden.
Oh, good morning, Harris. Well, it was a speech by an angry old man. If things are all that great, if everything's coming up roses, you'd think he'd be in a better mood. You'd think he wouldn't be so angry, but the problem is it's not coming up roses. Our nation is in deep, deep trouble. And it's in deep, deep trouble because of his policies. He opened the border. He has the authority to close it. He just doesn't want to. He sparked 40-year high inflation, which made a dollar that you held at the start of the Biden administration worth only 85 cents. People are feeling that pain. He's engaged in the war on fossil fuels. He's the one that directed the embarrassing and dangerous surrender in Afghanistan that has emboldened our enemies and set the world on flames. So these are all caused by President Biden's and his administration's actions, by their policies, and he can't defend them. So he gets all angry, blames everybody else. I thought what was probably most galling at the end of the speech, he was talking about he was president for all Americans. Now, he has painted half of America as potentially domestic terrorists. He's weaponized his federal agencies against Americans. Again, he falsely accuses Republicans of the exact same thing he does. He's destroying this country. He's destroying our Republican democracy.
Well, it seems like the one part that he really needed to hit hard would have been the border. The National Border Patrol Council President Brandon Judd responded to President Biden last night saying the union backed the stall border bill.
He's put us in a position that we're going to accept anything that is better than the status quo, and that bill is better than the status quo. It's completely disingenuous that he's talking about a border bill and putting it on Congress when he has the executive authority right now to do more than that border bill would ever do, but he's not going to do it because if he did something like that, he would be admitting that over the past 3 years, it's been his fault that we have this crisis at the border.
I watched that, I listened to it. I am a little confused about the fact that someone is forced to take a bill that they don't want because it's maybe better than the status quo. Is that where we are?
No, listen, I've dealt with Brandon Judd. I have nothing but respect for Border Patrol agents. They are drowning. They're drowning. I mean, 10,000 immigrants per day in December. On average, over this administration, 7,000 people per day, 24/7, day after day after day. So the Border Patrol, I mean, they'll grasp at straws. They'll take anything that's better than 10,000 a day. But as Brandon Judd points out, and I really appreciate these comments, President Biden has the authority to do so much better. Again, remember, President Trump used the existing law, even though it's been weakened by some court decisions, he secured the border. President Biden used that same authority to open it up. He can close it. He just wants an open border. He caused this crisis. He's just not willing to admit it.
I'm curious about something, and I can't imagine that this wasn't talked about on the Hill when the president first said it over a week ago, and that was that there might be something to expect coming up in executive action or order. And then that was disbanded. Do you know why he didn't try to do anything before the State of the Union or at all?
Because they want an open border. They just can't bring themselves to do anything to restrict it. They want this flow of illegal immigrants. I appreciate the fact that Elon Musk is pointing out the fact that even if these illegal migrants don't vote, they're going to get counted in a census. They're going to get counted in blue states, probably apportion more congressional seats to those blue states, and they're basically being able to vote that way as well. So this migrant flow from the Democrat standpoint is all about obtaining more and more power, more congressional seats, and a one-party state so they can continue to impose their horrible policies and ideology on this country.
And if anybody doubts that there wouldn't be a thirst in at least some parts of the Democratic Party about what you're talking about, when the current mayor, and I look outside toward 6th Avenue when I say this, the current mayor of this great city said when he was running not too long ago that he wanted illegals to be able to vote here. It was part of a campaign kind of promise that he was making, but he really thought he could make it happen. A House committee unanimously passed a bipartisan bill that would set up roadblocks to TikTok's U.S. operation unless Chinese parent company sells it. And that bill could lead to a ban. Before the vote, TikTok was urging users to call Congress about a total ban. Thousands of calls later, lawmakers say, case in point.
China is at war with us, and they use TikTok as a weapon. It's a platform that 150 million users are addicted to and can be persuaded by. As we're seeing just today, if you want to use your TikTok account, you have to put in your zip code so that TikTok can tell you which representative you should call. And that's just the beginning.
One op-ed says, at best, this is political interference by the U.S.'s top adversary. At worst, it's a deliberate effort to weaponize the mental health of American children and divide the nation internally, all to force the United States government to abandon its national security objectives. This is getting much deeper than anybody might have thought. China now is trying to fight back via TikTok.
Well, listen, China is fighting America on all fronts. You know, it was the Biden administration that canceled the China Initiative, which was a way to investigate Chinese theft of our intellectual property on university systems. It is China that is flooding fentanyl precursor chemicals into Mexico to come through our open border. It's China that is sending military-age men to the Darien Gap to assemble and come up to this country. So this is an all-out assault on behalf of China to weaken America, and unfortunately, President Biden's policies are allowing it to happen.
So what is the answer back for all of this? You literally have millions of young people under the age of even 18 on TikTok in America. You have a president of the United States who plans to campaign for those over the age of 18, the young voters that he's starting to lose with his policies. I mean, how do you combat that on behalf of people in America?
Well, it does start with parental control. You know, there are some great documentaries, Social Dilemma, the creepy line that I would recommend every American parent watch so they understand the dangers of social media, including TikTok, on their child's mental health. You know, there are benefits to big tech social media giants, but there are some real dangers, including TikTok and Chinese influence through TikTok. Yeah. So this starts with parental control. And I think we need to take a serious look at exactly how China is using TikTok. You know, again, I'm a free market guy, so I'm always a little concerned about bans, but this is a serious issue. But from my standpoint, there are much more dangerous things that China's doing. The fentanyl, the military-age men coming through our southern border, the theft of our intellectual property. Again, this is an across-the-board assault on our country by China.
Senator Johnson, thank you very much for being in focus. Appreciate your time. Have a great weekend.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.